With so much focus on keeping ourselves and our loved ones safe and healthy, it's easy to forget that most of us are going to experience things like allergies, colds, possibly even the flu. So, reminding you, proper hydration is crucial for all of these things. Remember, even slight dehydration can make you feel like you're getting sick, and none of us need that anxiety right now, that's for sure. That's where Hydrolyte comes in. Longtime fans will remember my obsession with Hydrolyte, which is simply the best oral rehydration product I've tried. I'm even more excited to introduce their brand new single-serve powder sticks. Simply pour one powder stick into a glass of water. They recommend 7 ounces. The powder dissolves almost instantly, creating the perfect balance of sodium, glucose, and water. Delivers up to 4 times the electrolytes of your typical sports drink. The other great news about Hydrolyte's new powder sticks, they're 100% all natural. No artificial flavors, colors, or sweeteners. They're available in flavors like orange and lemonade, and they taste great. Hydration is crucial, and Hydrolyte is fastest and easiest way to stay ahead of it. Get your supply of Hydrolyte powder sticks now at hydrolyte.com/DRDREW. Again, that's HYDRALYTE.com/DRDREW, and then use that code Dr. Drew 25 at checkout.
Hey, everyone. A dose of Dr. Drew, and that was me sniffling.
That's right. Friends at Hydrolyte, we love those guys. If you get ill, I don't care what you're ill with, this can help you stay hydrated. It's like an IV, and it makes you feel better. And if you're out in this heat, at least in lots of part of the country, it's quite hot. Exercising, I recommend it highly. And then we have a mission for Michael, AM/FM. They are there for residential care, really excellent mental health services. Of course, you're aware it is the Dr. Drew podcast, Dose of Drew with TYRUS today, our Monday session with TYRUS, and we're also joined by the great Dr. Kelly Victory. You guys responded so positively to Kelly yesterday. We brought her back to let TYRUS go at us a little bit. Let's bring Dr. Kelly on.
Wait. TYRUS of Nuff Said, the Greg Gutfeld Show, TYRUS and Timph. And then we have Dr. Kelly Victory, who you can also find on her YouTube channel. Whoops, that's not it. Victory Health Inc.
Oh, look
as
at that.
well.
All these pictures.
I know. I thought maybe we'd promo our guest for a change.
What a good idea. Go back to Kelly's tweet there. I want to start with that.
You mean your tweet?
No, before that. Well, we'll start with that one if you want.
All right, but first of all, let's introduce our guest.
All right, Kelly, welcome. Dr. Kelly Victory.
I have to swallow
Hey, nice
there
to be
you
back.
are.
Okay.
All
There I
right.
am.
Have you slept since I last spoke to you? You've been on TV continuously.
I've been on TV and radio pretty much continuously. The news cycle's been a little crazy with what's going on with the president, but I've gotten a little sleep in the meantime as well.
So let's bring also Tyrus in. I want to tell Tyrus.
We lost Tyrus.
No.
You don't lose me. I'm right here.
Okay, so there you are. Hey, so Tyrus, what I'm going to do is Dr. Kelly and I are going to review Trump's treatment and bring it up to the present moment real quickly. She and I did it in great detail yesterday. If people want to see what we talked about, we went over every single vitamin and medication he was on. But so Dr. Kelly, Dr. Victory. So we went over yesterday the Math Plus protocol, which was the vitamins, the Pepsid, the thiamine, the vitamin C, and the fact that he got Regeneron, which was the monoclonal antibody. We both agree that was a great move, do we not?
Yes, I think it was a good move. Just to review, it's not dissimilar from getting convalescent plasma. It's a way to get a patient antibodies to a specific virus that have been received from somebody else, except that in the case of Regeneron, rather than these being antibodies from an individual patient, they were manufactured, they're cloned. Antibodies, but it's a great way to jumpstart a patient's ability to fight off a virus because you don't need to wait for them to develop their own antibodies.
Right. It's kind of like what a vaccine does. But they did not use hydroxychloroquine, evidently, because they must have had a plan to use remdesivir, which you're not supposed to use together. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, and that's what I infer from reading Gilead's site. Remdesivir is still experimental. It's not FDA approved yet. But if I looked actually into the weeds on Gilead's site, and they indicate that if you're going to give the patient remdesivir, you specifically should not be giving or do not give hydroxychloroquine. I'm guessing the reason they did that, Dr. Drew, is because they want to avoid any confounding if there is a bad side effect. They don't want to be left to question, was this a result of remdesivir or was it a result of the hydroxychloroquine?
Right.
So you simply say, look, if you're giving remdesivir, no hydroxychloroquine.
And so they put him on zinc, but no hydroxychloroquine. And then the most recent thing was an aggressive move to use corticosteroids, particularly Decadron, which has been shown to work in severe, more advanced cases. And I'm personally seeing it used earlier all the time. Doctors are doing so. We discussed yesterday, we both kind of have an instinct that steroids, though they can suppress the immune response, as you're getting towards the end of the viral phase, if you're still kind of looking sick, it's not a bad move.
I think it actually was a great move. I'm a huge fan of steroids in that particular situation. We know that the people who've gotten into bad side effects or gone down a bad path with COVID-19, it's because of the inflammatory issues that happen and start this whole cascade of bad events, partly because of the immune response and partly just because of inflammation caused by the virus itself. So there's no better way to stem inflammatory response than by a big whopping dose of IV steroids. And that is apparently what the president received.
Right. And if you would put up Dr. Ken Jeong's tweet there, Susan, what he did was he took a screenshot of all of the president's tweets this morning, which were all in caps. I don't know if you can really see it there. Can you click on it and enlarge that? Anyways, he had a tweet storm this morning, all in caps. And then Ken Jeong said, quoted, "Dexamethasone is a hell of a drug." And I thought, oh, he is onto something, because when you're on dexamethasone, you are loud and big and agitated, and you've never felt better in your life. And I think that's a lot of what you're seeing on this Twitter.
I think you're right. Having put an awful lot of patients on steroids over my career and having taken them myself for other medical issues, during the first few hours and days, you feel like $1 million. It's like you had that extra cup of coffee. You feel like you could run a marathon. I think sometimes you don't realize quite how fast you're speaking or how loudly you're talking.
Right.
Or that you're using
over
caps.
time, over days, it can actually make you don't feel so good. You get a little emotional. People tend to feel not so happy after several days, but boy, the first day or two of high dose steroids, you feel bangerang.
My son took it when he had brain surgery when he was a baby. He was like 13 months old, and they gave it to him in alcohol form. And I was like, oh my gosh, Donald Trump hasn't had alcohol in his life, he says.
They didn't give it to him that
But
way.
I thought he was drunk, actually. I thought it was.
No, he's high. He's high, but he's not drunk. Now, the question is, he looked really good. Well, first let me bring Tyrus in. Tyrus, any comment about what you've heard so far from us?
Usually when there's conversations about steroids, it's usually quite different.
That's a different kind of steroid.
I'm usually going, bruh, I have a beer gut. I don't do steroids.
It's a different thing.
It's a different thing, but I mean, this was fun. It was fun seeing a good doctor saying, I'm on steroids all the time. Like, she's juicing.
Different steroid.
But we have to make that point, because I guarantee you, there's a lot of my fellow Americans that were like, yo, he's on the stuff.
You're right.
He had a rage. Was he raging this morning? Did he have some rage?
Yeah.
So there is a substantial difference between steroids that you're not supposed to take and steroids that doctors give you. So you're not going to get jacked. But yeah, he was hyped. But
he's hyped, and that's corticosteroids. They're actually, they break down muscle rather than build up muscle, like anabolic or androgenic steroids. Very different, but they all hype you up.
Thank you.
They all hype you up. But
doesn't it prove that he actually is the one tweeting, though?
Oh, he tweets, believe me. Leopold, our friend Leopold, asked about the brain effects of COVID and the medication. And so we've discussed dexamethasone, but it's an interesting thing Kelly and I were looking at yesterday. Kelly was thinking he looked like he was already sick on Tuesday night at the debate. And one of the things that happens with viral illnesses many times is you get agitated. Early in the illness particularly, you get a lot of agitation and irritability, and that may explain some of what was going on in that debate.
Yeah,
100%. I agree. I thought he looked ill myself. I thought he was red, sweating, uncomfortable, irritable, and all over the place.
I agree.
They were both all over the place.
So back to the dexamethasone. So we have him sort of inflated with that. It's going to get, there's a downside. The sort of the higher you get, the lower you get on the other side. So we'll see how that goes. But he looked good today. The problem is, Kelly, you agree with that? You see him a couple hours ago. He really looked good, but that could all be the steroids.
Well, it could, although I think probably it's more than that. I think he's probably gotten some decent sleep. He's gotten some additional IV fluids. I think there's no question that the other antiviral medications have helped him out because he looked pretty peaked to me, as I said before, on Tuesday night. And he did not look great the first day that he was at Walter Reed, not because I thought he was on death's doorstep or having shortness of breath or anything of that sort, but he just didn't look like he felt up to snuff. Today, he looks back to his normal self.
And I think that we're through this period where there's a probability of collapse around a cytokine storm. It's still, I guess, a remote possibility for the next 24 to 48 hours, but I feel like the real window for it is kind of closing, don't you?
It is theoretically possible
Yeah.
for him to still fall off a cliff, although I would be extraordinarily surprised.
Me too.
Drew, he hasn't had a fever for more than
Yeah.
72 hours
Yeah.
now. The
Yeah.
idea of him all of a sudden mounting a significant immune response that would cause him to crater, I think is really remote.
Hey, one thing I thought about this morning is they put him on aspirin, but they didn't put him on Lovenox. That was the one thing that I think I would have done different.
Well, I don't know that the addition of aspirin, I don't know that the aspirin is an addition. He may be on routine baby aspirin.
Oh, right.
On the basis of his age and the fact that he has dyslipidemia, he has high cholesterol and hypertension. So he may be on routine baby aspirin. I'm guessing that perhaps they decided not to go down the route of giving him something to anticoagulant or antiplatelet drug, thinking, here's the deal, we'll give him high-dose dexamethasone, and we'll simply stem the idea that he would go down that pathway into a coagulation issue.
What do you think about him getting remdesivir? Because it's a 5-day infusion, so he's going to still be getting it at the White House. This can be one of the first times it's been given outside of a hospital. He essentially has a hospital bed at the White House, doesn't he?
Well, I'm sure the White House could certainly be set up to everything to an operating room. Frankly, they have that capability.
Yeah.
Remdesivir can be given for up to 10 days. It's given as a once daily IV infusion. They've decided on 5 days. Again, this is a drug that's still very experimental, so they haven't well established the protocol yet. In fact, one of the issues with remdesivir is they're unclear exactly how much, what the ideal amount is to give to a patient.
Right.
So they decided they could have done anything from 1 dose to 10 days, and they decided on 5. I guess that's as good a place to start as any.
So, Tyrus, there's 2 more topics I want you both to ring in on. I'm going to go to you, Tyrus, first. Does the President of the United States, is he or she entitled to HIPAA privilege, to privacy of their medical records or care? Is there anything about that? Because every time I see people complaining that there's not enough information, I always wonder, he's entitled to hold back anything he wants, I think. No? Tyrus?
Historically, presidents never are forthcoming with their total picture of their health care. I mean, they're either on death's bed and they're still having aide come out and say they're fine. Senators do it. I mean, we've literally had senators die on the job, literally.
Mm-hmm.
It's just historically it doesn't happen. And there's good reasons for that. One, you need to know the basics. We all need to know the basics. But at the same time, we're not the only ones watching. And, you have a doctor comes out and breaks everything down. Let's just say the worst of it was that he was on assisted breathing and the next 48 hours were really touch and go. They didn't know if he was going to fall deeper or worse, or they were preparing put him on a ventilator. When the entire world hears that, there are certain countries that are going to start acting differently immediately because they realize that America is going to be in disarray. So just from a national security perspective, you're not going to tell your whole hand. But at the same time, and this is where I disagree, a lot of people disagree with me, at the same time, because of the way that President Trump has kind of handled COVID-19, how he's been very dismissive of certain things and downplaying it and having rallies where, they don't really push the masks and things like that. And you can argue whichever way you want it. With him having it in this moment to bring the country together, I think he could have maybe shared a little more of himself in terms of just hey, this is I'm going through the struggle. We need to rethink the way we're doing things. We need to, work on our stuff, follow the CDC as best we can, take care of ourselves, and understand that I'm the president of the United States, and not all of you can ever get the care that I can get. And look at what I'm going through. So please protect yourselves, because no helicopter is coming to my house to pick me up on day 3 of having COVID. There's not going to be a team of doctors waiting for me to take care of only me.
But TYRUS, I think you're underestimating the care that people get at the hospital. This is what he's gotten is probably going to become sort of a standardy kind of care. And I'm saying, and what he's, I think, going to push is, hey, COVID's no big deal. Look at me. I made it through no problem.
Yeah, and I think that's a mistake, because you have people who think, oh, well, then I'm not, it's not the people themselves. If you yourself don't want to wear a mask, don't want to do those things, that's fine. But when you enter public and come across other people and push that belief system, and then you have the president saying, well, look at the president of the United States, he backs me up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the problems come in hand. That's because we're not the president of the United States. We don't, and sorry, Dr. Drew, but literally in where I'm at, they tell you to stay away from the hospital until you are in critical situation. So you are that's when they'll bring you in.
Well, they used to say that. Are you still saying that?
They're still saying that here in Anvil, yeah.
So
But
Kelly,
again,
you have at it.
And this is from a layperson's perspective.
No, I hear you.
Saying,
I hear you.
Looking at it from my thing,
Well,
I just expected a little more humility from
all
my
right,
brother.
Dr. Kelly is in the ERs, so tell us.
Well, you dropped off for a minute there, but I assume you were still talking about the HIPAA issue.
We did the HIPAA issue, and TYRUS dovetailed it into national security, and then we talked a little bit about whether or not what Trump is received will become sort of a standard of care.
Okay.
And whether other people can expect to get similar care to what he got eventually, maybe not right now. And what if he takes the position, see, COVID's no big deal. I made it through no problem. You can get this care too. So it's the HIPAA and then him as a modeling behavior. What do we think about both those things?
Well, I'll actually take them in reverse order.
Okay.
I think with the issue about whether or not this will become mainstream treatment, when people have asked me what I think about the president getting both the Regeneron antibody treatment and the remdesivir, it's not that I'm against either one of them, because I think that they both are very reasonable and are showing good promise. The issue is, I think it's going to be tough to make them widely available to all Americans, in part because it has to be given by infusion.
Mm-hmm.
And the average individual doesn't have the ability to get IV infusions done at their home. So that means being in the hospital. And they're extraordinarily expensive. Remdesivir right now costs $3,000 a treatment. If you compare that to hydroxychloroquine, and again, I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm simply saying what's reasonable as a physician. And when I look at this from a public health perspective, hydroxychloroquine, in contradistinction, costs $12 for the entire course. It's given in pill form and can easily be given. It's available around the world, not just in the United States. Hydroxychloroquine is worldwide. It's been on the list of essential medications from the WHO for many decades.
Mm-hmm.
So although I hope that some of these more advanced therapeutics become available, I'd like to really see them depoliticize things like hydroxychloroquine and zinc and vitamin D. And
Easy
vitamin
stuff.
C,
Cheap stuff.
because
Yeah.
they're cheap and readily available.
Okay.
Then back to this HIPAA issue, I have strong feelings about it as a physician and as an American. I agree wholeheartedly with TYRUS that people need to know the basics. I think Americans have a right to know whether their commander-in-chief is of sound mind and body.
But now hold on though. But let's take that statement and let's use it as a what shall we say, a statement for a proposition, as a proposition. I agree with you. But now let's look at history. We have Woodrow Wilson, who was brain dead with a gigantic middle cerebral artery or maybe bigger stroke. We have John F. Kennedy, who was on meth doing cartwheels down a hotel hallway, psychotic. I mean, this is all documented stuff that most people don't even know about to this day, let alone back when they were president.
And so,
what do we do with that?
No, well, so what I would say is when a president has become acutely ill, say in the case of President Trump, or if it was Reagan when he was shot, whatever,
Great
I
point.
think you have a right to know that person is alive and well and mentating on their own. What his white blood count is, and what the results of his urinalysis were,
Right.
and what his CAT scan showed is, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, not the people's business. And the problem is that the media, everyone has become an armchair virologist and epidemiologist and internist in the process of the pandemic. So they hear something like the president had a transient drop in his blood oxygen, and they take that to the races.
Yeah, as though they know what that means. They have
Correct.
no way to understand. It's back to
Correct.
them having an opinion about medication they just learned how to pronounce.
Right.
It's
And
unbelievable.
Right. And so I think that we have to be very clear what information should be distributed and what shouldn't. And unfortunately, people have the viewpoint that because of the mass amount of information available on the internet, that, well, what do you mean? They didn't tell us what his CAT scan showed.
Right.
So what?
So what, indeed. TYRUS, you were in there saying, church.
Yeah, I mean, she was spitting words. I mean, she was dropping knowledge. Hopefully somebody picked it up. Sometimes I really think that our forefathers kind of got it wrong when they said free speech. I think it should have been free, intelligent speech.
Ooh, I like that.
You know what
Rational
I'm saying? I think
speech.
I think should have been a caveat. You know, we didn't have hashtags back then, but I think they should have thrown one in because
I like it.
It is borderline criminal to discuss things you have no idea what they are and they mean to make a point. And here's what it was. The severeness of COVID-19 is not just the result of what happens when you get COVID-19, because as through this whole pandemic, we have seen in a lot of cases, most of us, 90% of us, or not be higher, when we get COVID are going to get through it.
Yes.
We're going to be okay.
Not way bigger than 90%. The reality is.
Yeah, 98%, something like that, right? The dangerous thing is that while we have it, we can continue to pass it. Mm-hmm. And that's where that's the more dangerous of the two. It's not necessarily what's going to happen to the individual, but what he does when he has it.
Yeah.
You know, that's why we quarantine for 2 weeks so we can keep from spreading it, right? That's the main issue. Problem is, it's not sexy enough. That's not a big enough story. You know, it has to be. There's something more to it. There has to be a conspiracy that he's.
No, they got to it. They got to it this morning with. He took a ride with Secret Service agents. He wants them to die.
No, it's just I think sometimes when the one thing you kind of wish is that COVID-19. All the things it does, maybe the side effect was it cures a little narcissism. You know, it makes us think about others a little bit. I mean, that would be, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that would be
Please
cool.
use that on Saturday night, Friday night, whenever you record. Please.
You know, because I still feel for the Secret Service that, you know, he does have it. He's contagious, and he wanted to go for a ride. And although they were in hazmat suits and they did everything to be safe, I do get the argument where you say, was this trip really necessary? But again, that's their decisions that they make. The problem is when people see that, they don't always think about the Secret Service in hazmats. Is they think, oh, see, he's fine. He has COVID. He's driving around. So if I get it, I don't need to quarantine. You know, and that's the problem is that we have that group of population that just takes little things like that. And then you have the media who's like, he's trying to kill Secret Service. So then it turns off people who like, wait a minute, he's not trying to kill anybody. You're blowing this out of proportion. And then you could just say the president took a trip with Secret Service, tell the facts of the story. And if you don't like it, tell us why. Because he's contagious. And they have hazmat suits. And if you don't have a hazmat suit, then don't get in a car with somebody who has
Can't they
COVID-19.
find somebody who had COVID-19 to get as a
Well,
security guard?
Susan, that's exactly what I was thinking. And we don't know that they don't. They might have, but they might have been protecting themselves because we don't really know the full extent of immunity these days.
But you think about Drew, all the people who are taking care of the president on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Every nurse, every orderly,
That's
every
right.
technician, every doctor, the people who bring the dinner into him. each of those people puts themselves at some risk. They're obviously all taking precautions, whether it's by wearing, I don't see the need, by the way, to wear hazmat suits. We know how COVID-19 is spread, and it's not through the skin. But there's a little bit of theater involved in that. Wearing a respirator, an N95 mask like the Secret Service was wearing makes sense because they're very well protecting themselves. But part of what's happened with this COVID thing is we have elevated hyperbole to an Olympic sport. You have to either be, it has to be one or the other. Either the president's trying to kill the Secret Service because he has, total disdain for their lives or disregard for their lives, or everybody with COVID, active COVID, should get out and go on a drive-by and wave to their friends and family. Can we find some happy medium and say he is the president of the country? He felt that there was a reason to be at least seen, to kind of stem all of that disinformation that's out there saying, oh, he's actually on a ventilator, you just don't know it.
Right.
And so he did that. And it's vintage Trump.
You're right, and there already was in the late day yesterday all kinds of weird conspiracies about him actually being on a ventilator. And can't you see these shorter breaths? Something we discussed yesterday. Really,
well, I have a quick question for you two doctors.
Yeah.
Going back to your wife's point about being once you had COVID, it's not exactly a sure thing that you couldn't quite possibly get it again.
Correct.
As if you were his acting physician and he wanted to return to, because the plan is to return to the White House, probably while we're speaking right now.
Yeah.
But there are still cases popping up. I believe the press secretary confirmed today that she was positive for COVID-19, and that, with the White House possibly still spreading around or people not aware of it, do you think it's the best place for him right now, or staying in the hospital a couple more days just to clear it up?
It's a great question. And Kelly and I discussed yesterday that all the antibodies he received, exogenous antibodies, might have sort of blunted his own antibody response. So we don't know yet whether people that get remdesivir and Regeneron might be even less immune than an average person who sort of fights it off on their own. Kelly, what do you think about that question? It's a good question.
Yeah. And that's as I said yesterday, the one downside of taking exogenous antibodies, whether it's convalescent serum or that antibody cocktail, because then your body perceives it as, oh, I don't need to form antibodies. I just got a whole bunch infused into me. So your own innate immune system is not necessarily producing those antibodies.
Maybe.
Maybe, because we haven't had time to test it. All of that said, in all likelihood, there's a reason why people tend not to get virus after virus. If you've had a bad cold or a bad flu or a bad whatever, you tend to be, because your immune system has gotten ramped up, you're fighting it off. So in all likelihood, the president is probably one of the safest right now from COVID.
Yeah, probably.
Again, I can't prove it, but statistically speaking, he is probably in a good shape to get back out there and do what he was doing before.
And again, TYRUS, it's funny when you think about the application of medical judgment on somebody who's the leader of the free world versus, your TYRUS, one of your kids gets sick, let's say. You're going to be a little more conservative with the average person. Go, well, you spend a few more days, just hang around the house for next week and maybe wear a mask around her. As opposed to somebody you're like really trying to get them out there because that's what they want to do and it's important. It changes your judgment a little bit. May or may not be a good thing, but it does change it a little bit. But I want to go back to how about I wanted to ask a question about Kelly, is he contagious now? He's been 3 days since fever. Isn't that technically when the infectivity goes away?
Yes. And on top of that, Drew, having gotten the Regeneron, having gotten the antibody infusion and the remdesivir, both of which would have really suppressed his viral load. That was the purpose of those, is to really take that initial viral load down. He is not likely to be contagious at this point. And again, we're 72 plus hours since he's been running a fever. I would say his ability to transmit the virus is really zero.
How about the First Lady? She actually, it's a little harder to judge it. She'll probably end up on a 10-day quarantine, would you say?
She probably will, again, to quote the out of an abundance of caution, a phrase I don't care if I ever hear again. But you're right, Melania probably now. They haven't said much about what she's getting. I would guess that she probably is on a more conservative course of treatment, maybe additional zinc, vitamin D, vitamin C, those sorts of things. I'd be surprised if she'd gotten any types of infusions based on her age, her underlying health, and
Symptoms.
her symptoms.
Yeah.
I would be very surprised. She's probably on a real conservative course of zinc and some supplemental vitamins.
She could be on hydroxychloroquine. It's possible.
She very well could
Don't
be on
say that word.
hydroxychloroquine.
No, I would think about it if I were treating her. I would think about that.
I
The H
absolutely would.
Yeah, but what we're hearing is she's having so few symptoms. I
Right.
probably would not do anything. Just kind of just like you say, just the vitamins. What about TYRUS? What about Mr. Trump's video today where he said now he's learned about COVID? He's really been to school. He's truly been schooled now because he had this experience of having COVID. What do you think he meant by that, and how do you think that's going to change his approach, if at all?
Sometimes I just wish he wouldn't talk so much because he just says things that you can't be the smartest guy in the room and then say, hey, I just learned something when you've been leading us through it. I think it's just a choice of words, and it's probably the Jews talking. If I wouldn't have heard the Woodward's recordings where he was very aware of how his passing was concerned and he wanted to downplay it in terms of not panicking the country or whatever.
Right.
I just, sometimes when he says things like that, you almost wish he gave a longer speech, because I think initially when he says stuff, it's kind of like his hyperbole or his like just kind of his way. He's very
extreme.
The things you don't like about him are the reasons why he became president.
Yeah.
He's arrogant, his confidence. You know, when it's channeled right, it does great things. But when it's on the defensive side, it comes off very narcissistic. So it just depends on what's it talking about. So when he's like, "Oh, I'm a student now of the game," I would like to hear just where he goes with that. If he's going to start mandating that the White House staff all wear masks, we all make sure we're washing our hands, social distancing. If we see a different thing at his rallies where people are more spread out, you can't make everyone wear a mask if they choose not to. Like a lot of people don't know it, at his rallies, they do provide everyone with masks and they take temperatures and give hand sanitizer, but a lot of people still choose not to wear masks. So then you look at, well, if he's leading by example, if he wears the mask up until he gives his speech, will that change some of the people's attitudes? Because the mask isn't really about you, it's about your neighbor.
But this is the first time,
and that's what we need to get back to.
I'm sure someone has said this before, but it's the first time I've ever heard anybody state clearly the Woodward conversation about not wanting to panic the country and some of his rhetoric right now. You're putting a direct line to the president. I think you're right.
Yeah, and that's, again, I'm not a fan of I'm a Republican, but I feel like if we don't criticize our side and we don't hold our side accountable, you can't expect the other side to, and I would hope that they would police themselves, but they, I'm not even going to go there. But the point is like,
your buddy,
your buddy
Kat Timpf made a statement last week on Gutfeld that I thought was rather intriguing, which, she's a heartless libertarian, right? We both agree that, yes? Well, she's certainly heartless.
I have
she's
my
heartless.
doubts, but yeah,
she's heartless. So that's Kat, and she's a libertarian. And she said, why are we allowing so much power to be concentrated in anybody's hands? We've just sort of given over and over and over much more of our freedoms, and I mean, think about it. And centralized power. I thought, wow, she is so right about that. You think so?
No, in terms of, when I hear people say things like, "Oh, I'm not wearing a mask, it's against my freedoms," I'm like, in what way? You could still talk through it. We could still hear your ridiculousness. Whenever I hear people talking about stuff being infringed or their rights or freedoms, I always go the other way. Like, I don't believe any one of us are being walked out of our house and walked off to concentration camp or a refugee camp because of our thought process, or we disagree, or we say things. That's not the country we live in. That's
Hey,
not
my
the world
country,
we live
my
in. So,
state locked me in my house and is trying to keep me there.
yeah.
Kelly?
But
And
maybe what comes out of this, so in terms of the president's experience with having had COVID, isn't that he translates that into, wow, I've had it now, so I see the purpose behind these different policies. Maybe it doesn't impact policy at all. Maybe his takeaway from this is that he's slightly more sympathetic to others
Right.
who've had it. Maybe he takes from that he says, wow, it's tough. I felt lousy for a few days. I'm sorry for all of you who felt badly. He can take it to a more personal, sympathetic, empathetic viewpoint of feeling badly for people who've been sick, or understanding how people are fearful, without going down the road of saying, oh yes, I've seen the light. The policy needs to be 8 feet apart and masks forever. He doesn't need to go down that route. He can simply maybe internalize it and make himself somewhat more sympathetic or empathetic to the millions of people who've had this and have felt badly.
Yep. And your Greg's boyfriend, Scott Adams, said that's what he thought that Trump was going to catch from this was empathy. What do you think,
Yeah.
Tyrus?
no, I don't think he's an empathetic guy. I don't see that. I think he'll make it his in his own way, and we'll either accept it or admire him for it or shake our heads at it. It's kind of like it's either one or the other with him. But again, whenever I hear people, I always just kind of stop. No one is being asked to live in their basement forever. No one's being asked to wear a mask forever. We're being asked to do things because we're still trying to figure this out. We might later find out that the masks weren't where it was at. It might have been something, we could have done something else. But the point is, when your country asks you to do something to better your neighbor, to protect ourselves, because this COVID thing, we got 200,000 plus dead Americans. And if we don't try to do things to protect it, we're going to be going through this until we get, the one thing is for herd immunity was the one thing, or a vaccine. These are the lights at the end of the tunnel that we're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
But even if our lives were put on hold for a year, let's say, where we had to do masks and social distance and limit travel and stuff for 1 year to beat a virus, and not only give us time to get ahead of it for the next one coming, that's not a big sacrifice to ask anyone.
Well, it is.
I find it.
It depends.
Laughable when I hear we sound spoiled when we're like, oh, they're asking me to do. Someone's asking you to do something for your country and your fellow Americans.
No, I
right
get
now.
you. I hear you.
I mean,
hear
it's
you,
ridiculous.
but
at least they're asking, because a lot of places don't.
That's true. I'll grant you that. I like the way you framed it. However, as they say, it depends whose ox is being gored. There are so many small businesses that are being destroyed. There's Disney just laid off 35,000 people. You know what I mean? People are really getting hurt by it. I believe you can accept what you said as axiomatic and still navigate in ways where you're not hurting so many people by that ask.
And I would push back a little bit too, because my specialty really is mass casualty, and for the past well more than a decade, 2 decades, I've really been immersed in responding to and teaching about how to respond to mass casualty events, and I've seen the best in Americans as a result. I have gone to more scenes that are just horrific, and never fail to be just stunned at the selflessness of Americans to their neighbors, to people they don't know, their ability, their willingness to sacrifice and to give, and the humility with which they do it, up until the point that they realize they've been duped. And unfortunately, I think that people are willing to sacrifice, willing to give up whatever it is, Tyrus, for more than a year, if they believe that what they are doing is based really on something that has any chance of being successful. And I think, unfortunately, it's my belief that the science, if you will, is simply not there to support an awful lot of what we're doing. I would have much rather seen Americans rally around. Think of all the businesses we could have created in an attempt to protect and isolate the at-risk people. Think of all the cool businesses we could have done, whether it was delivery services of groceries to elderly people, dog walking services, specialty hours of operation for businesses that would cater to those people in high-risk categories. All the cool things Americans with all their ingenuity could have done And I think those things would have been more impactful than instead saying, we're going to do a mass quarantine, never been done in the history of mankind, mass, forcing healthy people to wear masks, never been done in the history of mankind. And so I don't think it's that people aren't willing to sacrifice or feel like poor, pitiful me. It's that the things they're being asked to do in that sacrifice aren't likely to be helpful.
And
Well,
tell
I tend to
again,
think
people.
we'd have a lot more debt if we didn't do those things.
Well, Kelly, your background, your training, so people can understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I'm residency trained as a trauma and emergency specialist, and I did that for many, many years in a hospital-based setting. But then I branched off towards public health and went to postgraduate training in public health and became a mass casualty specialist. So I've now been looking more at the population-based healthcare. I've spent an awful lot of time managing pandemics, including back at SARS back in 2008 and 9, H1N1. I've had a lot of experience. SARS is 2003.
Why didn't we have a more vigorous response with H1N1? I got H1N1. It nearly killed me. It was a terrible illness. And it killed 20 to 40-year-olds routinely. One of my questions was, why are we reacting so fiercely to COVID when we had essentially no reaction to H1N1, which killed 600,000 people? People don't even know it happened. Why didn't we have a more vigorous response to that?
Precisely, and that's what I'm saying. We've never done this before. If you go back, I'm a student of disasters. I know an awful lot about, if you go all the way back to 1918, and I've really studied that pandemic, as many others have, and said, now that one killed upwards of 50 million people globally and 675,000 just in the United States. And tragically, the target for the Spanish flu was
young males.
But healthy young
Yeah.
men between
Yeah.
20 and 40, absolutely devastating to your workforce. The upside, if there is one, to COVID is that the people in the highest risk category tended to be the people who weren't working anymore anyway, because they're people over the age of 70 is the highest risk category. So I just wish we had done some things to really rally around and protect the truly at risk, instead of saying, wow, we're going to shut down grade schools and cancel sports camps for kids, when that category simply is at essentially zero risk. And so we've asked people to sacrifice, to me, an awful lot and to suffer tremendously without the hope of those particular things making a meaningful impact. And all you have to do is look at Sweden, look at Japan, look at places that didn't do it. They essentially have gotten over the epidemic without the smoldering crater that used to be their economy.
TYRUS, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, again, it's nice to hear science, because we have become to the point where we mock science now, and it's constant. And when I look at this situation as somebody who was on the ground, who was deal with having a type 1 diabetic in my household, so I have to be careful everywhere I go and everything I do. And the fact that I've literally seen the politicalization of science and health to benefit because of my party feels it's more of a nuisance, breaking the economy down. If you're telling me the simple way that we could have got through this was to walk dogs and make small businesses for other people, I'm all for it. So that should be great. He should be coming out with a speech tomorrow about these great new plans and jobs that's going to help get the numbers down and stop passing it, because America, we're not ahead of the other countries. You can list all of Sweden and all, yep, they're smaller, they have different plans. New Zealand, China, although we'll never get a truth with China how many actually died over there, but we are still going through where we're seeing an uptick in the Midwest. I get that we can be overzealous because the political thing, Democrats are going too hard on it. Republicans aren't going hard enough on it because they all seem to think it affects their voting. So it's very hard to find a clear line when everything's being shrouded in politics, and politics is the new religion. So it's very hard to talk to somebody who's a diehard Republican about making sacrifices and changes that we all have to make because COVID's not going anywhere. I hate it. It's affected our home small business. We're doing everything we can to keep our employees employed. My bottom line, I can't make a movie. I can't travel to see family in California. Like, we're all feeling the pinch, and we're all making sacrifices. So when I hear, oh, well, it's because of this and that, it's because this is bigger than SARS and Ebola, because it's here and it's still spreading, and people are still, and we're still dying. Our president, the most protected man on the planet, got COVID, and we can talk about all the reasons why, and I'll make all the speculations, but he shouldn't have. He should not have, based on, if it's so easy to contain and all we have to do is do a couple of things. The White House should have been the last place to be running rampant with COVID right now. I mean, it's literally could affect the Supreme Court vote. We've had, 4 senators who have it, and hopefully no one feels adverse effects and we don't lose any of our leadership from COVID. But I'm saying is, like, I think that there could have been better precautions to protect our government, to protect ourselves when we are being asked to do the same things in our homes, and our leadership isn't doing the things, and we're seeing the results of that. So that's where my issue's at.
And what I'm saying, actually, Tyrus, is that it's not easy to contain. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying the exact opposite. It's not easy to contain. And anything we're doing is pure folly. You believe you're going to contain it. We haven't, just like I think it's very unlikely we'll come up with a vaccine for it. I'm pro-vaccine. I love vaccines. I tell people, absolutely vaccinate your kids. But we've never come up with a vaccine, for example, for the common cold. Think about the viruses that have been around a heck of a lot longer. Herpes, HIV, Ebola, Coxsackie virus, norovirus. Heck of a lot of viruses been out there a long time, for which scientists have never been able to come up with a vaccine. So these aren't easy to contain. And masks, unfortunately, although it seems like you want them to control it, they simply don't. So the best thing I think we can do would be to isolate and protect those people who are likely to have a bad go of it, knowing that the rest of us are very likely to get exposed to it. And some percentage of us will actually get sick, just like we do with influenza. But the risk of you or me or Dr. Drew getting this and getting super sick, or God forbid, dying from it, is extraordinarily low. But unfortunately, containing a virus is super tough. And it's the same reason why the common cold is out there and influenza is out there. And despite the fact that we have a flu vaccine, we didn't get rid of influenza A. It comes back every year.
Let's talk a little bit about this current little surge. I don't want to call it a surge. This little, essentially an elbow in the graph, where we've gone from a peak last summer of around 70,000 cases a day. We got down to a low of around 40,000, and we popped back up. Whoops, wait a minute. A low of, let me see what that is. It looks like 28,000. And we popped back up to 35, 40 in that range. Hospitalization has taken a little increase, which is the only thing I'm concerned about. The death rate has continued down. Correct. What do you make of it?
Well, I think we've been largely locked in a case-demic because we continue to test so many people who are asymptomatic, something we've never done ever before in the history of medicine. If we randomly tested people every single year for influenza, you may find out that we actually have a pandemic, quote unquote, of influenza every year that you didn't know about, because 85% of them don't have symptoms. But we've never done that before. So the biggest issue is that we are testing people who are asymptomatic and then basing public policy on that number of cases, rather than, as you pointed out, following the things that are important, which is the number of hospitalizations, ICU admissions, and God forbid, deaths. That's what we need to focus on. So why there's been a little uptick, there was a tiny uptick in hospitalizations, but deaths have continued to fall. I mean, I'll be very clear. I don't have a dog in this fight, but this hasn't met the criteria to be called a pandemic for months.
Yeah, and
months.
We don't know if excess deaths, I don't think excess deaths are definitely not going up. Susan, put that up there again, and put the full range, the so-called full range
Literally
graph.
this, doctors, because this is why I get frustrated, and this is why I lift weights.
Tell me.
The medical community would come out and unitedly say that basically masks don't work, that we can prove. Because it's not the first time I've I've had a conversation with learned doctors who've said there's no science to back the mask. But then you have the CDC who's on TV every night telling us to wear masks, to do this. And and I'm consider myself an intelligent dude. It is confusing and frustrating for me to the point when I see other people coming up to my family or approach me when I'm out and we all have masks on, they don't have a mask on, I get frustrated by it. And I'll immediately tell them, yo, do not come over where we're at. We're social distancing. Why is it so difficult to get the medical community who have all the same information to just give us a straight answer and say, listen, carry on, this is like the common cold. If you get it, you'll deal with it. Let's protect our elderly the best we can. Let's set up services for them because it's not going anywhere. Why cannot we, just like the great example she made, common cold, the flu, it kills people every year. It's not going anywhere. We deal with it. We eventually got some flu shots that kind of mediate it a little bit, slow it down. Why can we not get, because I refuse to believe that all medicine is politics.
Well, it's not all politics, but it is all discourse, disquisition, and disagreement. That's why we have tumor boards every week. We all gather together in a room with all our different disciplines, and we argue about what the right thing is, what the right course of action is. Everybody has a different opinion. Now, unfortunately, and then we reach a consensus, and we're always doing it on behalf of the patient. What's the best course for the patient? But because it's a science, because everybody's an expert, everybody has their own slightly different and often very different opinion, and we get together and we're used to collaborating, meaning fighting, until we reach a consensus on what we should do for a given patient. Unfortunately, that has broken out into the media now, and you're seeing us doing it publicly, which is how medicine is done. And that's why, think about how many nutritional suggestions have been taken and gone back and forth. What are we supposed to believe? One minute it's cholesterol, fat is bad, next minute fat is good. Yeah, that's how science works. That's right. That if you were a scientist, you'd go, yeah, that's how it works. Kelly, what?
So the best course of action then is to go by the consensus.
That's your best bet. Your best bet. But don't worry about dissenting opinions out there in public. They're important. We need to hear them, but kind of stay with the consensus if you're wondering what to do. Kelly, you agree?
Oh, well, I do. I agree. There are a couple different issues here. Okay. Number one, I feel your pain, Tyrus, and I say this all the time. I feel so bad for the lay public because we have confused them up one side and down the other. And the CDC has done themselves a tremendous disservice by doing a 180. Masks, no need to wear them, to all of a sudden, not only need to wear them, there should be a mandate. First it was, we shouldn't meet in groups any more than 50.
More than 6.
Right, and all of a sudden it's 6. So I understand it has got to be insanely frustrating to your average layperson to say, what the heck are we supposed to believe? Yeah. And Drew, you used the exact example I would have said. Eggs are good, eggs are bad. Yeah. We've changed it on nutrition all the time. And because we now have the 24/7 news cycle and access to so much information, people have become even more confused because they try to do their own research, unfortunately, on highly, let's face it, censored and filtered websites. You see on Google and Twitter and YouTube and Facebook what they want you to see. What I have done, Tyrus, is I have said to people, go to the CDC's own website. And I would tell anybody this. If you go to the CDC's website, you can find a meta-analysis of 10 different studies on masks that come to the conclusion that there's no evidence that masks work to stem the spread of respiratory viruses. I didn't write the study. I just read it.
And there's a recent, and again, this is the science. There's a recent discussion that may be because it's preventing the droplets, which is going to get on somebody's face 3 feet away, but not preventing the aerosols that come out the side.
And so So what all I've tried to do from the beginning of this is say, here's my experience as a surgeon. Here's why I wear a mask. I wear a mask only to keep me from inadvertently coughing or spitting into an open wound, and to keep me from getting sprayed in the face with blood or other bodily fluids. That's it. Not to stop the spread of any kind of infectious disease that I might have from my respiratory tree to the patient, or from the patient to me. So these are just the facts. The fact that we can't get the CDC or the WHO or the powers that be to be on that page, the mask itself has become a talisman. It's become a sign of something else. And in fact, the studies on the CDC's own website come to the conclusion that the only reason a mask may actually work is because it signals other people, I'm sick. I
Stay
don't
away.
feel well. Stay away from me.
Yeah.
See, I'm lucky. I get to talk to a doctor every week. So I get to ask my questions, and I'm a pretty good student of the game. But whenever I look on the CDC, I'm often confused by what I'm seeing by the press releases, because
I get it.
Unfortunately, one of the messages that we get out there is you will see an anchor, a person who's supposed to be bringing you news,
Yeah.
Basically accusing people of attempted murder for not wearing a mask.
Right.
I mean,
That's
it's
right.
borderline. I mean, there's no if you're not wearing a mask and you're around people, you could, because people don't have qualified immunity. One of my favorite things that me and Dr. B talk about. So are you saying now that I could sue somebody for not wearing a mask based on the
I bet there are attorneys that will do stuff like that. I'm sure of it. Whether it's real or not, they could find those kinds. Don't confuse a courtroom with a clinical situation.
But I'm just saying, just this alone, like I'm learning a lot today.
Yeah, good.
And because I'm different. I don't assume I know it. All I can tell you is what I've been doing and how I'm understanding.
Well, and TYRUS, Kelly and I differ on certain things. Like, I wear a mask. I do it because I figure even if it's a 10% effect, and it doesn't. I don't have any adverse thing around the mask, but I certainly don't condemn other people if they're not wearing a mask. Right? I just, she and I disagree. That's the nature of the process here. She and I talk about these things and try to reach a consensus about it.
If you want to get somebody to notice you, like walking down the street,
don't wear a mask.
Don't put it. Yeah, that's true. Like, I'm an old woman. I don't get looks anymore. Like, men don't look at me anymore.
What?
But I've
been
shot
you
some
shouldn't
looks.
want those things.
She's
no,
wanted
I
it
don't.
forever.
That's a whole other episode.
Yeah,
That's a whole other episode.
Yeah.
But it's funny because when somebody looks at me and I go, "Oh shit, I forgot my mask. I have to go back in my car." People see you coming and they just shoot you a look.
And I find that's really sad. I mean, there is the bigger picture of that wearing masks to me are not harmless. Some people say, well, no flag, no foul. And I'd say, well, I think there is a flag and a foul. I think there is a downside, even if you don't want to buy into the impact of actually rebreathing stuff that you just coughed or sneezed out. The fact that you are then rebreathing all that stuff on an ongoing basis. I think there's a significant psychosocial factor, particularly with kids.
Yeah.
And I tweeted out the other day something about it. I said, we are living the zombie apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about what a zombie is, that, zombies are these faceless, soulless, heartless individuals that are capable of doing all kinds of heinous actions. We are creating this faceless, you're already anonymous on social media. Then you take away the face and you make people capable of doing and acting in ways that they would never act if there was accountability, if they had an identity, if somebody was looking at them. And it's part of the reason why I tell people, if you find yourself in that situation where somebody's standing in front of your car and you're about to get drug out of your car by the mob, make eye contact with the person standing in front of your car. That person. It's about, we need to connect with people. And the masks to me are stopping us from connecting with people as individuals. I look at children, babies in the grocery store who are in that formative time of their development when they're supposed to learn how to interpret nonverbal cues. Interpret, what does a smile mean?
Yeah.
What does that? And they're missing all that.
It's not only that, it's that it turns out the whole emotional regulatory landscape is dependent on the back and forth of nonverbal facial interactions.
Right.
And so there's that point is very well taken. That point is very well taken. So, okay.
Unfortunately, real
TYRUS.
quick before, because the missus is going to start pounding chicken. tenderizing. There we go.
Right. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I
She
think
heard
the
you.
masks, yeah, the masks are the exclamation point of what social media has done to us anyways, with taking away accountability and being able to say it was to always to say horrendous, horrible things about people you don't know,
Yeah.
just to get attention and
Yeah.
destroy careers, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the mask gives you the courage, that same courage you had on social media, to
Interesting.
not be accountable.
Exactly.
I think that's why we're seeing, and I agree with that, but I think the mask is an explanation of the bigger problem. I just wish we knew that we were able to get advice like this. We're here. Like I said, Dr. Drew, and you were telling me things that I didn't quite understand. Now, notice, have I threatened to attack either one of you?
No.
Did I talk
No,
about
you've
your
been listening
mothers,
very-
or call you
listening,
names,
you're
or hang up
listening,
the
you're-
phone, and
Yeah.
yeah,
You're listening,
some of it I
incorporating, and then you're going to
disagreed with, but
tweet shit
I'm
about us
learning to
later.
think. Yeah, no, I probably won't.
I
Because
know you
again,
won't.
I have real life stuff going on.
I
But
hear the tenderizing. I hear it.
I told you, it's time. Time, like, you know.
You sure that's
I'm
not a sort
gonna-
of sure
Let
that's
me
not a
explain something to
message?
you. I can't. No, here's the deal. One of the things in the pandemic, or whatever you want to call it, when the missus says she's going to cook, I'm not going to tell her to wait, because if I tell her to wait, she's a businesswoman. You know what I'm saying? She's got other things going on. She's got Zoom meetings and stuff. If I want a home cooked meal, when that window's in there, Jesus could be on this with us, and I'd be like, listen, thanks for coming back, but I got to eat, bro. I'm not missing out on a home cooked meal tonight. So.
I thought it was Morse code for get off the show, Tyrus.
No, it's Morse code for if your big ass want to eat tonight, you better not complain about me tenderizing chicken. And so, you know, I'm thankful for that. But I just like to say I learned a lot today. And thank you, Doc.
Good.
And hopefully I wasn't too abrasive, because
No.
it's difficult
No.
in terms of trying to learn some things, because it's hard out here because you just don't know.
No, listen, and look, and we're still every time I talk to Dr. Victory, I'm not sure where we're going to be exactly. You know, I'm always asking, you know, do you agree with that? Do you agree with this? You know, we're just two doctors, and there are tens of thousands out there that are also collaborating and talking and listening. And let me just say, nobody does this better than the American healthcare system. That's why we have all these amazing new treatments, because we do this, and I knew that would be a key feature of how we responded to this pandemic. People criticize the healthcare system, but they never talk about these kinds of phenomena where we come up and we improvise and we come up with treatments that nowhere else in the world has come up with. Kelly, you agree with that?
I do, and it's precisely why the cancel culture is really scary when it comes to this. The idea that people have been censored and shut down. You can disagree with me all day long. I love that. Push back. I used to have a sign on my desk when I was chief medical officer saying, you know, argue with me. Argue with me. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah.
That's great. What's not great is censorship, taking down people's YouTube videos where they're talking about a particular treatment, or where we're debating about whether masks or social distancing work, because that is the very basis of how we've become the greatest healthcare country in the world. And we need to have this dialogue. So I appreciate your feedback, Tyrus. I think you represent the thoughts of an awful lot of people.
Yeah, for sure.
And as I said, I truly feel badly for the American public right now, because they've been given an awful lot of differing information, and it's confusing as all hell.
Well,
and it's hard
and
to know where to go.
Yeah, that is another piece of this, Tyrus, which is that I've been doing healthcare messaging since the 80s. I was initially working on the HIV and AIDS epidemic, and it was because of Anthony Fauci telling us young guys to go out there. But I've learned that the way you do healthcare messaging is through narrative and through relatable sources and consistent messaging and a little humor. The healthcare messaging that the country, the states, and the counties have pushed out is precisely the opposite of how you should do it. I mean, it's uncanny how pathetic they have been in their messaging, and that's a lot of where the problem's coming from. You should be able to turn to somebody.
And we're not listening, because the biggest thing that I did today is I listened.
Yeah.
You know, and you have to listen. You don't listen going, oh man, this is, man, whatever. Like, you actually listen. Notice no one interrupted anyone.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, because I was listening, and I think that's the biggest lesson you can take from this, is that we all need to start listening.
I
across
totally
the board,
agree. I think that's a great
because
note.
we might actually realize, like, you know what, that makes sense.
And
know?
guys, I think that
you don't think about you're breathing your own stuff back on you.
I would like to leave it right there. I think that's a good place to leave our conversation. Tyrus, I hope that the tenderizing is not some sort of metaphor or a message to you subliminally from your wife. I trust it's just because she's making a good meal, right? Sometimes a cigar is just a good smoke, Tyrus.
Yeah, no, she's throwing down.
Yeah, okay.
She's throwing down.
And Kelly, Dr. Kelly Victory, Dr. Kelly Victory, always a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for joining with. I cannot thank you enough for spending time with us, and I will see you both soon.
Great, thanks for having me.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.
God bless you.
Bye, guys. And for me, okay, there we go. You guys, Susan's putting up the thread
people
there.
were talking the whole time.
Yeah, I kind of was watching a little bit here.
There was
some weird stuff.
There was one question that started at the beginning when one of our favorite YouTube people who always asks great questions and gives us lots of cash on YouTube. So I saved it for you.
Who is that? What is that?
Leopold.
Oh, yeah. Leopold always asks good. Is it possible that we talked about that?
Yeah, just.
Okay, it's possible the COVID passed through the blood-brain. Just do it again, just one more time. They passed blood-brain barrier, and as opposed to irritability, the virus itself may affecting the brain. The virus affects the neural tissue. It just does, and that's why we have headaches. And there's various the virus can get pretty much everywhere, as far as I understand it. And the immune cells and the neural cells develop together. So there's a close relationship between those systems. And as such, of course, these viruses can affect everything. And the irritability that some people get, or the confusion that some people get when they're sick, may be related to the virus getting it, may just be due to generally being sick. So it's hard to tell. It's always hard to tell which that is. But I know that early in a course of viral illness, it's not at all common to see emotional and mental status changes. It's very common. And we might have been seeing that in the debates last week and Tuesday with the president. So it's an interesting theory.
I don't know. Maybe you answered it. I wasn't sure.
You definitely see it now with the dexamethasone. You see all the caps, and he's never felt better, and all this kind of inflation.
It's pretty funny.
That's dexamethasone. Carrie Casey says, I watched the Ron Paul stroke. Can you give us a play-by-play? Yeah, he had a what appeared to be a right middle cerebral artery stroke, which affects the sensory and motor cortices. So the other side of the body goes out completely, and the face as well. And what was weird is what he seemed to have an aphasia. He seemed to have, I didn't watch it very carefully, but he seemed to be having a left-sided stroke with an aphasia. It's usually the other way. It's usually a right-sided stroke with an aphasia. So it makes me wonder whether he's a true left-handed person, because true left-handed people will reverse that. So it's just sort of interesting. It's possible that what looked like an aphasia was just him becoming sort of stunned by the injury to his head, but it kind of looked like he was becoming aphasic, which was kind of surprised me. Usually, what you get with a right hemisphere left-sided knockout is something called anosognosia, which is denial. They don't believe anything has happened, which is kind of one of the interesting side effects of that. Okay, let's kind of wrap this thing up. Susan, is there anything else you want to put up there?
Oh, we have a really great show coming up. Speaking of people that were censored, I think. Dr. Vladimir Zelenko.
And we're going to have Dr. Yo question him with me.
Was he censored, or was he just had a little cancel experience? When
he was canceled, and he wasn't one of the people that stood up in the white coats and were severely censored. He's just had an unpopular position, and we're going to hear it. We're going to hear the detail and hear what he has to say.
This Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, and Dr. Yo, who we love. I don't know how we're going to segment it, but we'll figure out how to get these two together.
Yeah, we'll do it.
And then tonight you have a special report with Alex Michelson.
Oh, yeah, that's tonight at 7. And we have Dr. Oz on tonight, and we're going to review some of the same stuff in terms of the president's treatment and progress. See what Dr. Oz has to say about that.
foxla.com/live if you're not in the Los Angeles basin. Also, where are you, Drew? I got to find you. Where'd you go?
I don't know. I'm sitting right here.
I lost you.
Tuesday still, right?
Yeah, so tomorrow's Tuesday. We're not going to have a show tomorrow.
Oh, how about that?
No, because we have to set up for an ESPN thing, and I can't touch the cameras unless we really have to do it on my computer, which we'll talk
How's that going to
about.
work for Wednesday?
Wednesday, Caleb's running it, so we can't.
get
Caleb's taking over the equipment for the next 48 hours. I mean, I can do it from my laptop, but we might just let people share the last 2 days of shows that we've done, and then on Wednesday we can come back with Zelenko and catch up and just, share if you care.
I'm delighted. I'm delighted not to have to do a show tomorrow because I've got lots of time I have to spend with Adam Carolla tomorrow.
We have so much going on this week. So you have stuff on Thursday as well.
Yeah.
So we have to, maybe Thursday night you can do just a chat with your followers
Okay.
But Kelly Victory has really educated all of us, and I appreciate her time.
She raises rational issues. We don't know if she's right or wrong. She's just she's a reasonable person, a well-trained physician. She's an excellent doctor, and she's raising some ideas that we should be thinking about. It's not as axiomatic as it looks. Again, if the government was asking us to do things that had zero effect on our lives, we should do it. But instead, they're asking us to do stuff that massively alters our lives and our mental health, and it's having incredibly adverse effect on many fronts. And that's why we need to be really thinking about, are we doing the right thing? Might there be another way to look at this?
So did you see Andrew's message? He said, Dr. Drew, please see the tweet I just sent you on Justin Hart
Ashkashvili?
Yeah, those 3 scientists met with Secretary Azar and Dr. Atlas.
Well, he sent me a video, which he also just put up on the chat stream here that you all ought to look at if you're interested in contrary opinions. These are 3 scientists that have had a contrary opinion. They had an influence on the governor of Florida. Florida opened up, and their cases have continued down. Is that a case study or not? Is that science? I mean, we'll have to keep an eye on these things.
Maybe all the old people.
Indiana opened up, and it's gone up a little bit. Indiana's not doing as well. So, is Florida doing something different?
Who knows?
Yes, Miss Kaylee, Adam is quite grumpy. Indeed. So I've got to go here, do that.
Of course,
Fox
you saw
show.
that question.
I've got to do the Fox show here. We thank you for being here. Thank you, Dr. Kelly Victory. Thank you to the great TYRUS. I'll be on that show in about a couple hours. I'll also be on I do a 6 o'clock hit too. I'll be on the 6 o'clock show briefly commenting on something. I'll find out when I get there.
Have fun.
Thank you guys, and we'll see you on Wednesday. The World Health Organization estimates that each year approximately 1 million people take their own life. That's 1 death every 40 seconds. Experts predicted numbers would peak in 2020, but no one could have imagined the devastation brought on by COVID-19. During the coronavirus pandemic, you may experience anxiety, sadness, and loneliness. Existing mental health conditions, including severe anxiety and major depression, may worsen. If you're feeling hopeless, contemplating self-harm, or you're concerned about someone else, I'm here to tell you there is hope. A Mission for Michael is dedicated to helping clients achieve complete inner and outer transformation. Mission for Michael is the premier resource for intensive mental health treatment in Southern California. With an astonishing 2-to-1 client-to-staff ratio, each client in their facility receives individual care 24 hours a day, overseen by a team of all doctorate or master's level clinicians. With a focus on evidence-based treatment, along with personalized and compassionate care, they offer mental health treatment that can change lives. If you're suffering from mental illness or you're concerned about a loved one, go to amfmtreatment.com. Again, that's a Mission for Michael, amfmtreatment.com, or call 866-581-4401. Again, that is 866-581-4401.
Real talk.
Headlines have become sickening. They become poisonous.
Dissecting headlines.
Defying state orders. Sheriff Bianco not enforcing what the governor is saying.
Dialed in with decision makers.
Clarify what you actually meant.
Get the answers you need.
At the beginning of this, we were told, don't wear a mask. Is this really helping?
Expect a different kind of newscast. Fox 11 News Special Report. Weeknights at 7.